Okay, hello everybody. Here with some technical analysis and price action analysis of Bitcoin. First, I would like to talk about the point of the dump or where we started to dump, and then I'll continue with today's analysis. Then we go to New York stock market. We analyze S&P 500. We continue with Dixie and a little bit of Ethereum at the end of this video. Now, let's jump right into it. So, like I said, I want to talk about the point of the dump. Here's the last leg up we had, and after this leg up, it got rejected here. It retested this pink line, and then it swept both shorters and longers with high leverages. This little red candle, as you see, and then another green candle trying to retest this white trend line, which has failed, and then it comes back down and it continues downside. Now, this retest of this pink line is very valid because we did it before too. As you can see here, we retested it again, failed, come back down, and here was the first touch that we did. We couldn't even go above this pink line. Now, if we look at the Bitcoin 1 hour time frame or 3-4 hour even time frame, we could tell that BTC is doing a rising broadening wedge. What is that supposed to mean? Means if you look at this pink trend line that my mouse is over right now and this white trend line that my mouse is over right now, it's forming a rising broadening wedge. And these rising broadening wedges usually end up with a wick to the upside before downside. So if we say this was the wick to the upside, which failed the breakout and it got rejected heavily. Now, right now, if we go to 5 minutes time frame, right here, we could see that yesterday Bitcoin was doing a pennant. This is a pennant. And it failed to break above it. It failed to break above it. It broke down from here, and then it retested this support area. This is a local support. It could not even hold this. It bounced lower here, whereas the pink line is. Which the pink line is the bottom of our wedge, and that's why it bounced back up. It regained this support, and now we might spike up here to the bottom of this pennant that we had before. Just a retest here, maybe at market open, or even go higher a little bit, and then we come back down. So the other thing I want to mention is the head and shoulder possibility on Bitcoin. Again, if you look at the 1 hour, 4 hour will do, and here is the right, and I'm sorry, here's the left shoulder. This is the left shoulder, right? Let me just draw it for you. So this will be the left shoulder, and this black line is the neckline. Okay, so now this is the head. Okay, now usually Bitcoin, when it's doing the right shoulder, it goes lower than before. It goes lower than the neckline. So if we come lower than the neckline, would be around this dashed pink area. Then we come back, we test the top of that left shoulder around here, and then we continue downside. It's a scuffed head and shoulder, I know, but you never get a perfect head and shoulder. Now, with that being said, now I want to look at the stock market. I want to look at SPX. Let's take a look at that. Here we go. SPX, S&P 500, which it's correlated with BTC directly. So when it moves up, BTC goes up. When it moves down, BTC moves down. Of course, we have some decoupling here and there meaning that BTC does its own move while S&P doing another move. But then at the end, they always catch up. So if you really want to make sure that you're trading Bitcoin and you know what you're doing, you always have to look at SPX. All right, now SPX, this week when we started the week, and this is a 1 hour time frame, we had a CME gap. I'm sorry, my mind just froze for a second. So we had a CME gap here and it did not fill it. If you look at it, we started here. This is yesterday's candle. We tried to fill it, but then we got rejected and then we went back. So right now, S&P 500 is doing two types of chart patterns. One of them is descending broadening wedge, which is these two yellow lines that I draw. And one of them is a pennant, again, that we know already. And we did not fill this gap. So what I think is today we're going to start going a little bit lower and then we come back to fill the gap. And the same happened last week. So if you look at here, 2 weeks ago we closed here, right? And then last week we opened here on Monday. We made a little bit of gap, but we did not fill it on our first day last week. We ended here. Then next day on Tuesday, which was the last day of January, we filled the gap, but we only not filled the gap, we went even higher. We went higher till here and here. If we want to do a little bit of price action analysis, we got rejected here. We only touched it once. We got rejected heavily. The candle turned even red, and then it tried to come back. It failed, and it went lower. Here was the bounce back. We bounced, powerful bounce here, as we see, and then it tries to come back to retest it, but it couldn't. So it ends up around here, and then it gets another hefty rejection, which this rejection, these two candles, tells me that SPX has run out of fuel. It cannot come back to test this, and it mostly just gonna fill this gap and continue downwards. Now if you look at Dixie too, here's Dixie. Dixie was in a huge downtrend and it just broke the downtrend. Let's look at the 4 hour on Dixie. It's better. So, and let me zoom out. There we go. So we dumped from this channel, this parallel channel, and then we came back. We retested this. This was a double bottom, by the way, but it did not pan out. So it retested the bottom of that parallel channel. It failed and it continued to bleed slowly from here. And right now it bounced back at a local support at 100, which this is actually a huge horizontal support too. And maybe today we go a little bit higher. I think if we break this 106, then we will see some capitulation candle towards downside for Bitcoin. But until then, Bitcoin will bleed, but probably slowly. Now, with that being said, it's time to check Bitcoin's liquidity. Now we know all the trend lines that could play out. We know the trend, everything. Now let's look at the liquidity. So what is liquidity exactly? Liquidity means the amount of money that can get liquidated if the price reaches certain price or certain level. Let's say it that way. So now this is Binance liquidity. It's all leverages. That means high leverage, low leverage. And if we see here, we have a little bit of cluster towards the upside. So if the price moves towards the upside, all these people or traders will get liquidated. Now the cluster is clear. If we just take a look at here, as you see, it shows liquidation cluster 15 million, 13 million, and this is only Binance. If we look at Bitfinex, there's a lot of liquidity to the upside, OKX to the downside, and Bybit, almost no liquidity around. Nobody's trading this range. So that's why I would think that Bitcoin, because of the liquidity, will grab this liquidity first, will liquidate all the longers or the high leverage longers, and then continues downside. But always remember, the liquidity to grab is not that easy. You have to have enough money to break into that liquidity and grab the money. Well, that's for market makers to decide. Now, if you look at the heat map too, this is the heat map of Bitcoin leverages. As we see around here, especially to the downside, there's not much to grab. To the upside, just a little bit, exactly what we had here. Exactly what we had here. And the GIX is showing possible buy pressure before a downside. You have to read the documentation on GIX, but yes, that's all for Bitcoin. Now let's look at the Ethereum, which usually follows Bitcoin too. Just worth to say that Ethereum yesterday had a lot of liquidity to the downside. So now let's see liquidity on Binance before we start talking about the trend. These are make sense. If you combine them all together, they'll make sense. So it's mostly to the downside, and it's a huge one too. We're very close, so we might end up going down on Ethereum first and then a leg up. So now let's look at the charts on ETH. This is ETH chart. It's doing the same rising broadening wedge as Bitcoin was doing. There's multiple levels you can think of. First of all, it's this wick to wick, which I don't think is going to play out, but I have it on my mind. The second one is this white line, which I think this one is in play. And if Ethereum is about to do anything, it's going to touch this level first, get a little bit of rejection, come to this green line, this yellow line, and then bounce back up. And this green line is actually the middle line, which we are, excuse me, which we are in the middle of right now. And well, it was doing a pennant as BTC, but not as clean. As you see, there's no touches around here. There's no touch. But with this touch around here, the single touch, we could say, well, it's doing a pennant. And if you draw the pennant, you see it exited the pennant. But again, it's doing the same thing as BTC. And bottom line, we probably have a push back up and then a lot more to sell. So I think if I want to open a short position at the end, I would open it around here, and my stop loss would be this wick here. So if it gets here, I'll get out, and if it gets to the downside, then I'll see where it goes. And that's all for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know if I could do anything better, or you want to know any other coins for TA. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for watching.